Hi, everyone. This is Michelle Hill, your legacy builder at Winning Proof, and this is another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted. Today, I have a very special guest who I'm really excited to talk to, and it's Patrick Venzke. And I'm going to read his bio so I can properly give him an introduction, and then we'll go into just an informal conversation, asking him some questions. Once called the American Dream by Brian Baldinger of NFL Network after becoming the first German citizen in the NFL and having made millions in real estate after his football career, Patrick was living the life. Then he lost it all in 2008, 2009, a real estate crash, which brought him to his knees. From living in a $1.8 million mansion to applying for food stamps within 3 years, forced into bankruptcy and his health crumbling, Patrick turned to alcohol for comfort. His health and marriage ruined. Patrick achieved sobriety and vowed to educate young people about the abyss of addiction. Patrick has a history of motivating people, from experienced professionals to junior high schoolers. He connects to audiences using both brutal honesty and humor. I like that. His high energy style and stage presence captures the audience's attention. Patrick seeks not to change the state of mind of his audience. He drives for a paradigm shift to change the way his audience perceives the world. As president of the Jacksonville chapter of the NFL Alumni Association, Patrick lives by the motto, caring for kids. Patrick knows firsthand that one chance encounter can change someone's life. As a young football player, he met Hall of Fame tackle Anthony Munoz, who bestowed on Patrick, "You will never play a perfect game, but you can always give perfect effort." That became Patrick's life motto and propelled him to become the first German citizen in the NFL with the 2001 Jacksonville Jaguars. Patrick currently serves on the business advisory board of the Safe Beat Initiative, a cardiac arrest screening organization to prevent heart attacks in school children. Patrick, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so glad that you're reading it so professionally. I couldn't have said it more eloquently. It sounds very fancy when it's written down in a nice term. I'm like, wow, that's me.
That's you. That's right. So I want to start out by just asking you to give the viewers a 30,000 foot view of your journey into the NFL as the first German-born player.
Absolutely. Growing up in West Germany, a middle-class kid, coming from a pretty hardcore family. My dad was a professional athlete and in the special forces. My grandpa was in the German special forces in the Second World War. So never surrender, always finish what you start. Those things were ingrained for me, but it was a very comfortable lifestyle. I tried soccer. I played tennis on an all-state level, but I was like the big tall kid, right? 6'6", 270, 280. And one thing you're proud of me, when I was 10 or 11 years old, Michelle, I did horseback riding. You know why? Because all the girls were doing horseback riding. I was the only big guy in front of 10 girls. Can you imagine the poor horse? When Big Patrick rolled up, there's 10 kids who were 80 pounds and there's Patrick. "Hello, ladies. Can I go horseback riding with you?" And the poor horse like, oh my gosh, here it comes, right? And then one of my friends just took me to a football practice and I was hooked right away. Those practices were pretty much not organized by your school, but by your city. So it's my club playing against your club. It would be like New York City versus Birmingham, for example, right? And it was an open class. There was no age restriction. So you're a 15, 16-year-old guy going against 25-year-old police officers, hooligans, gangbangers. It was a crazy sport in Germany because it attracted the most violent people in the world. And from the very first moment, I loved it.
Okay, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so share how, we're going to talk about your, a little bit about going into the NFL, but share how you got into real estate and what happened in 2008 when the housing market crashed. If you want to kind of preface it by your transition out of the NFL, if you want to share about your NFL playing days, feel free to do that as well.
Absolutely. I just want to explain the jump from Germany. I played high school football in the States in a small town in Idaho, Blackfoot, Idaho, population 2,000. It's a small Mormon village. And here comes Patrick, black hair, leather pants. I'm like, the chosen one has arrived. And my poor family, who's this guy, you know? But it turned out to be my best experience. I had to go back to serve in the German military. So for 18 months, military service was still mandatory in Germany. And then I played for the University of Idaho, became a free agent invitation to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I made the Jaguars under Coach Coughlin, because I'm very much used to being yelled at all the time, right? From the German military to college. And they're like, be on time, don't screw up. I'm like, perfect, you know? So I fit right in. And I was just a backup in the NFL. I was a superstar in the NFL Europe, where they sent you to the minor leagues to play in Germany in the NFL Europe. And then, so I made some money, maybe like $1 million, a little less in football, which nowadays doesn't sound like much money when you see nowadays salaries. And I put that money to real estate into a hot market in 2004 in Jacksonville, Florida. And I bought one house, bought one rental. All of a sudden, I'm sitting on a portfolio of like 20, 25 homes, and I was building luxury homes too at the same time. So I was doing land development, buying the dirt, and then building my own luxury home, flipping it. All of a sudden, my net worth on paper was like $4 to $6 million. I was living the dream. The S-Class wasn't enough. Now you want the Rolls Royce, right? The 5,000 square foot house wasn't enough. Building a 6,000 square foot house, building 11,000 square foot house, living the dream. Reading the Wall Street Journal in the pool in the morning, Michelle. I'm like, I'm working hard. What do you want from me? And yeah, and then it all come crumbling down really hard.
Wow. Wow. No. So what were your first feelings when the 2008 market crashed and everything? What were your initial feelings about, did you, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Or did you think you were okay? Like, I'm still okay.
Well, I knew one thing, Michelle. I had to make all my mortgage payments to keep my credit score intact, so I could potentially apply for more credit. I didn't know that all the credit was dried up. You get like a letter from your private wealth manager from SunTrust Bank. Dear Patrick, we're sorry to inform you that all your credit lines have been frozen, because to bankroll my operation, my daily expenses, I used massive credit lines attached to my houses. It's like $500,000 in a revolving credit line. And when that was frozen, I was out of money, out of credit, still had to pay all my construction guys. So I used up all my net worth, tried to stay current. And finally, 5 years later, I started missing my first payments, and I was declaring bankruptcy in 2015. It was brutal.
Oh, wow. Wow. So at some point, alcohol came in. So how did alcohol play a part in your personal crash?
Absolutely. You know, like it really changed from having a nice glass of wine with a steak and, you know, enjoying yourself with a family, or, you know, drinking some Bud Lights, watching football on a Sunday, to really a daily occurrence, to minimize minimize the pain that I'm feeling. I felt like I let my family down. I have to make 50 to 80,000 a month just to break even. It was the pressure was unbelievable. I was exporting cars to Germany to get some active income, and I had $250,000 in Range Rovers on a ship on the way to Amsterdam, and the European currency crashed. So now you lost $50,000 in one day, just based on the currency exchange value. And I can see more and more alcohol playing a bigger part in my life. Even in the mornings, maybe during the day, working all night. It was a brutal, brutal experience.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And did it take a toll on your body? Did it show itself at first, or did it take some time, or did it have a reaction? Did your body react to it after a certain amount of time of drinking that much alcohol a day?
Well, in 2017, I left Jacksonville, where I was working, and moved back to Idaho, to a small town. And that's where my wife and my 3 kids lived. And that's really when I changed. I went from 280 to almost 350, 360 pounds, because I was drinking now on a daily basis, and the kids were still babies. So they're screaming all night. I couldn't sleep. So I drank more in the morning. And when I slept at night, I wasn't really sleeping. I was just passed out. There was no restful REM sleep. There was no deep sleep. It was just constantly in a state of agitation, irritation. It was really tough. And it really finally took a final toll in 2020. I was 394 pounds, Michelle, before I came to a Jacksonville rehab. My blood pressure was 188 over 122. I was a walking heart attack. So that's the final game of addiction. It starts out fun. It wants to isolate you from your family. And in the end game of addiction, the addiction wants you dead. And that's the message I want to spread with the kids nowadays.
Wow. Yeah. What I used to tell my kids too, is that you don't know if you're the one that can't handle it. You know, some people can have a glass of wine every night the rest of their lives and they're okay, but you don't know if you're that one. So yeah, that's where the kids come in to play.
Yeah, and in recovery, we're calling it crossing it, an invisible line. You don't see the line you're crossing when you go from a recreational drinker to like a heavy drinker, a stress drinker who can still stop, to the true alcoholic who cannot or will not stop. My wife has half a glass of wine and puts half a glass back in the fridge. I finished the whole bottle with the whole point of never drinking again tomorrow morning. And then I wake up and drink another bottle. And in the morning you wake up and like, oh, what happened? Oh, let's have another beer just to get the day started. It's just unbelievable how fast it really accelerates in the final game of addiction.
Yeah, and you don't realize it, like that invisible line you're talking about. You don't realize that you have stepped over that line. There's not something when you take that first drink that says, I'm going to handle this, or that says, oh, I think I'll become an alcoholic today. It's a gradual process. Is that correct?
As your brain is changing, your habits are changing, and you don't know when you cross that line. In 2013, my body fat was like 12 to 15%, which is really good, for a big guy. And 2020, I was at 42% body fat. But your brain is looking in the mirror saying, hey, if I lose 10 pounds, I could be a big and tall model. And my sponsor's like, bro, if you gain 10 pounds, you're going to be a sumo wrestler. So your brain, it's also like a disease of the brain, of perception. You think, oh, it's not that bad. They drink more than me. Those people, they don't understand my pain. And really, it slowly gets you to the stage of death. And it's really a scary proposition with having kids and a wife.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Now, at that point, somebody came into your life that maybe changed the trajectory of your life. So who came into your life that made the biggest impact on your decision to get sober?
It's two people really. In 2015, 2016, I was flagged as highly suicidal by the NFL because I lost all my money. I felt like I failed my family. I failed my life purpose. I'm a German soldier and I failed my mission in a sense, right? To provide stability for my family. And Scott Gorman was an NFL counselor, a therapist. He's pretty much a firefighter for the NFL. So when Andy Reid kid, when Tony Dungy's kid commits suicide, he's flying in to talk in an emergency. He came to me and said, hey, Pet, let's talk about your drinking. I'm like, yeah, let's go to a nice Outback Steakhouse, have some drinks and talk about it. So in 2015, 2016, I was exposed to AA and I finally knew I have to make some changes. And then finally the NFL Trust, it's paid for by the active players to help former players, got me into rehab in 2020. And that's when I realized how bad it became.
Okay.
So it was like 5-year gradual process. It wasn't like the one person showed up and had a burning bush experience. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be sober tomorrow morning. It was more like, man, it got really bad. And then finally, I used a free resource from the NFL to go to a Jacksonville rehab. And that's when it all changed.
Okay. Okay. Do you remember that moment that you admitted, which is the first step in AA? Do you remember that first moment that you like, I have a problem?
Yeah, there was 2 moments in 2020. I stopped drinking in April. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine. And I stopped completely. Cold turkey, no problem. Lost 30, 40 pounds. Everything was awesome. On 4th of July, I decided to have one drink, to celebrate America, freedom, America, the reason I'm here, all the good stuff. And I drank 250 Michelob Ultras in 10 days. Wow. The one drink turned into 250 of the small bottles. And the funny thing, Michelle, whenever you see the commercials for the drinks, there's always like beautiful girls and handsome men playing beach volleyball with their six packs and they're all 10 having a good time drinking one or two. That wasn't my case. Yeah. I drank 250 of those babies in 10 days. I remember because they come in 24 packs and every day I needed to start a new second pack because I finished more than 24 bottles a day. And then it really hit me, man, I'm having a problem here. I can't stop after I have one. So July 4th of last year was really my rock bottom when I say, you know what, I need some professional help.
Okay. And you really, when you're saying 2020, you haven't been sober for 20 years, or you haven't been on your journey for a whole long time. You're in recovery. And I think alcoholics, you're always in recovery. You're always, a recovering alcoholic, no matter how long you've been sober, but you're new on your journey.
Yes, I've been to more than 1,200 AA meetings. So I've been exposed to the program since 2015. And I had 30 days here, 60 days here. I didn't really think about it. But then with the pandemic hitting in 2020, the drinking got really bad again. And then when I come to the conclusion, I cannot have another drink in my life, period. So I'm reaching my 1-year anniversary mark. So I'm pretty excited right now. I dropped 70 pounds. So I'm back to my 305, 310. I'm feeling pretty happy at 6'6", 6'7". I'm really happy right now. Content.
Okay. That is so awesome. And I totally celebrate with you, because that's it takes a decision every single day. Every single day you decide, I'm not going to go back there today. The next day, I'm not going to go back there today. So that's, it's a mindset strength. So I want to ask you, what else have you done that has contributed to your successful results?
Absolutely. I started serving others. I was lost and I found myself in service. So I work as a patient liaison here in Las Vegas in a rehab. So every day I see people fresh out of detox, I see in what frantic state they are. And I constantly try to help them, advise them, and teach what has been taught to me and what helped me. I meditate. The one thing I want, if you stress me out right now, Michelle, I don't want to think I need to have a drink to calm down. Are there other coping mechanisms? What else can I do? So I'm writing a book right now. I came up with 10 pillars of mental mastery. And it starts with mastering the moment.
Yes.
If I can control my moment, we talk about the ego and the state and the paradigm shift and all the good stuff, but I have to control the moment right now. And in this moment, I choose not to pick up a drink. So by mastering my moment, I learned really how to stay present, and not to have that what I call automatic reactive behavior. Michelle is mean to Patrick. Patrick is mean to Michelle. Patrick needs a drink to calm down, right? I changed that pattern the last 11 months, and I'm really proud of, okay, take a deep breath, change my state by a gratitude list, go for a walk, go to the gym, do meditation, and then, we recaptured the moment. Because when I'm just reacting to what you say, I lost the moment. I'm losing it because now I'm just reacting. So those things really helped me. I really went deep. I read hundreds of books. The good thing about rehab, you don't have the daily stressors. You can really work on yourself, and I feel like a new person. And now I want to share that with the world.
That is incredible. And before we went on the recording, we were talking about, being obsessive in going to the gym, or drinking coffee, or whatever the habit is. Is it okay to be obsessive when you're recovering from alcohol addiction? Is that okay to be obsessive about healthy habits?
That's a really loaded question, Michelle, because you don't want to trade one addiction for another. So everything in moderation is fine. I see a lot here in rehab. Young girl moves in, young boy moves in, they fall in love. All they do is they changing one addiction, one obsession with something else, right? So everything in moderation. I feel like, if it helps you change your state of mind and prevents the drinking, it's okay. But when your mind becomes obsessed with exercising or have to lose weight and then you become anorexic, that's unhealthy too. So everything in moderation, I would say.
Excellent. Yes. And that was, I hope, was the point that you made with that, because obsession of any kind is not a healthy life pattern, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've replaced alcohol with helping others, which is, an incredible shift and that paradigm shift. So what are your plans to continue building back your life?
And let's go back to the stage shift and the paradigm shift, because people ask me all the time, you're this motivational speaker. So when Tony Robbins, the greatest of all, goes on the stage, said, Michelle, you and I, we're going to lose weight. We're going to change the whole world. Everything is rah, rah, rah. In this moment, my state has shifted, but my paradigm is the same. Paradigm just means how I see the world. But when somebody tells me you can always give perfect effort, see, no, I don't control the event anymore. I only control my effort. That's a true paradigm shift. So that's what I teach people, how to change the way you see the world. So now I'm going to hit the road. I'm going to start a podcast. It's called Big Man in a Van. And my vision is to visit all 32 NFL cities, or I guess with some of the shared stadium, all 30 NFL cities. Because, you know, the Rams and like the New York Jets, New York Giants have one stadium. So pretty much hit 30 cities and meet some of my friends who still play in the NFL, who still coach in the NFL. And let's talk good, bad, and ugly. Let's look at the homeless population in New Orleans. I can show you the glitz and glamour here in Las Vegas, but we're feeding homeless people in the tunnels here in Las Vegas. So I want to show people everything, talk to interesting people, and really convey my message of hope. And you're not stigmatized. You're not alone. Do not end your life tonight, you know? So it goes into suicide prevention, which is tied in with mental health and addiction. It's a very, very big knot of all things, because I don't like myself because I feel weird. So I start drinking to change my state. So is it addiction or mental health, right? So I start working with mental health organization like the STAR app. It's a new app that will measure your baseline of mental health. And if you drop below a certain point, they will send resources to your app. You can hit an SOS button. For example, in my case, it will be connecting me with the NFL suicide prevention line. In your case, maybe like a firefighter helpline or like a police officer helpline. So I'm super stoked to travel the United States and spread awareness. Sorry for the super long answer.
I love that. Yes. And that, you know, that has to be so fulfilling, because drinking and drug abuse is not fulfilling. It's under any circumstances. It feels like it's filling a need at the time, but helping others, changing others' lives, saving a life that would be gone because of hopelessness. That's a huge mission.
Absolutely. And I work with a lot of like veterans in my community. And it's nothing more saddening than to have like a former Navy SEAL on the phone talking about committing suicide. It's really because trauma and tragedy creates the addictive behavior, because we try to forget what we've seen. And people go through warfare, first responders, nurses in the pandemic, they've seen things that people shouldn't see in their lifetime. And those memories dictate their state, and they're using drugs and alcohol to forget about the pain for a minute. But like you said, it's just a temporary relief for a permanent solution until we change the way you see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback on that, what are you most proud of?
Probably my kids still tell me that I love them, you know. So I taught my kids, I'm not the hands-on dad, because I was in Jacksonville trying to make money, you know. I traveled the world playing football. But every day of my life, I told my kids, I love you guys. Because my dad was very Germanic. My grandpa was very Germanic. We don't use the I love you word, right? So we grew up, I knew there was love in my house, but it wasn't like, I love you. So from the moment my kids were born, every single day they seen their dad, I told them I love them. Every single day. So that makes me probably the most proud. Then, of course, making the NFL and breaking that barrier for German players. Nowadays, you see so many international players. It's a given, right? But in the old days, there was no internet. There was no YouTube video of the combine. It's nothing. There was no NFL network. Just me flying my butt to Idaho to do some SAT testing, you know, back and forth, you know. And then knowing that I provided a safe haven for my kids in Idaho. There's a small house with small cars, and they live a very good middle-class life, eating organic food. Seeing the poverty here in Las Vegas, away from the casinos, I see people eating out of trash cans. And that changes your perspective real fast. I'm like, oh, I'm in rehab today. I only get a soup and a sandwich. I see people eating out of trash cans. And just keeping this perspective makes me very proud that every day I'm thankful and I'm still alive. That makes me very proud too, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. So, and going on from that, what motivates you to continue being strong during your recovery journey?
I see that one kid right now in a dark room, desperate, lonely, and isolated, wanting to end their own lives, right? And I'm like, I've been in this moment. I've been in the darkness. If you just make it through the night, there's always light, but it's darkest before dawn. So I want to be a voice of hope and saying, if you get the right resources, if you just call a friend, if you pick up the phone and talk to somebody, I promise you it will get better, because I know those things, because I was that person in that room in the darkness.
Yes, yes. And that really is the perfect segue to my next question, which is talk to the person that is watching this right now who might be struggling with alcohol addiction, drug addiction, maybe a food addiction or a gambling addiction. What would you tell them?
That you're not alone, that your voice matters, and that now, as we have a rising consciousness on this planet, you're no longer stigmatized. The addiction wants you dead and isolated, right? Addiction can only win when you don't talk to your friends. You don't go to an AA meeting. You don't go to an NA meeting. Addiction wins in your loneliness. So you have to reach out to somebody, a school counselor, a helpline, but you cannot be alone in the darkness, because alone with our own thoughts, the addiction will win. So my message is always like, reach out to someone and know that you're loved and heard. And I promise you it will change if you give it a try.
That is excellent. And I hope that somebody is hearing this that does reach out and get some help, because yeah, it can, I'm sure it can feel really isolating and that nobody cares. And we get the voices, the story we tell ourselves in our brain. Nobody cares if I live or die, all that, internal story. So that breaks that when you reach out to someone.
Internal dialogue, you're not worthy, you're not loved, nobody cares about you. That's just addiction wanting you dead, isolated away from the hurt. It's almost like jumping off a ship and now you're clinging onto a life raft. Mm-hmm. The closer you stay to the middle of the life raft, the less chance are that the sharks are getting you. If you're swimming alone in the ocean, the sharks will get you. And that's really, we have to understand how dangerous addiction is. It wants you dead and isolated. It will take everything away from you. I always say addiction is a beautiful mistress. She's always there for you in your lonely times, right? But she will take everything away from you.
Yes.
Also, one more, when I say we have like a rising consciousness, we had Lance Johnson. He is a right tackle for the Eagles. He's one of the big guys, right? He's 6'8", 340. He took 2 weeks off in the middle of the season. He took a mental health break. That would never happen, Michelle, 20 years ago in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But now you see the biggest and toughest and baddest people in the world saying, you know what? I have a mental problem. I need a timeout for myself. I think that would help remove the stigma of mental health. Even if the strongest gladiators need a break, it's okay for a teenager to take a break. It's okay for me. My parents just go through a divorce. Something is happening in my life. It's okay to talk to a school counselor if the toughest guys in the world need a little help too.
Yes, absolutely. Positively, just reach out, and everything in us when we're in that moment doesn't want to. We want to stay isolated. That's, what you're saying, but that reaching out. So that reaching out is that string of hope that can save your life, literally.
Yeah, and that's what I like about the Star app. It has an SOS feature. So in the menu, you hit SOS, and it will be customized to your school. So you can reach your school counselor. In my case, I could call the NFL suicide prevention hotline. I could call an addiction hotline. I really like that, because you and I know when we're in the state, it's very hard to leave that state. But most of us have a phone on them. And if you just hit the SOS button, at least you can talk to somebody to make it through a long night. Because I know the long night gets lonely. I've been there in the very dark spot, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're on the other side of that. And I'm so glad that you're making an impact in so many people's lives. That's really exciting. So can you share what you have on your plate for the next year, for the next couple of years? Do you have things on your plate that you're really excited about?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The first thing, I really want to get that app into the hands of the most amount of people I can help with, especially the veterans community, first responders, student and student athletes. I think we're going to work with the life services and some of the big universities. Say, hey, every single student should have at least some resources. We will never collect the data, so we don't know it's Michelle or Patrick reaching out, but we now have a baseline to compare it to. Because what if every single soldier in boot camp has a mental health baseline? After 2 or 3 deployments in Afghanistan, they come back, I'm like, holy moly, something happened to you because you see all your friends blown up. So now we have those resources on this app to help you right now. So I'm super stoked. And then I'm talking to like 2 different rehab centers to be a spokesperson, ambassador. I hope they give me a big van to be the big man in the van. I'm going to travel the United States and really spread the word, talk to the schools. Motivational speaking is important. It pays the bills, but really the message is like, you are not alone. So it's mental health, recovery, and motivational speaking.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely love that. You're going to be a busy man. You are a busy man already.
I'm a busy guy, but that's okay. Hey, make me more busy. Give me more sponsors, Michelle. Let's write a book. Actually, it's funny that we're talking right now because Michelle is going to help me write a book. And I'm super stoked to work with you in the coming future. Next 6 months, we should have something in print. And I'm super excited to work with you.
Me too. I am thrilled, and I'm thrilled to be part of your journey. Did I forget anything? Do you want to share anything additional that we didn't cover that you want to share with people?
Yes. One thing that's really important to me when we talk about stigma, the stigma of mental health and or addiction. That's really something I want to hammer home right now by giving a very simple example. Patrick gets cancer. Everybody's like, oh, poor Patrick, he has to go through chemotherapy, he gets treatment, Patrick gets better, but then the cancer returns. You see how it's not Patrick's fault that he's he's suffering from cancer. Well, Patrick is a drunk, he's an alcoholic, and then, he gets treatment or he's going to rehab. That's where the stigma comes from. And then Patrick chooses to drink again. So it's very personalized, where if you have cancer or diabetes, everybody feels sorry for yourself. Michelle, you broke your leg, let me push your little wheelchair. I'm so sorry, Michelle. But Patrick, that drunk, he had another drink and relapsed. It's his fault. That is stigma explained in a very simple example. And if I have one message for everybody, please remove the stigma from the disease of addiction and mental health. It's not the person's fault. Like, it's not your fault that you get cancer, but everybody feels so terrible for the person suffering from cancer. And then say the cancer returns. It's a neutral event that happened to you. But then say Patrick went out and got drunk again. It's a very personalized stigma of the person being of weak will or being a bad person. As society, I would love for us to change that narrative.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's wise counsel or wise wisdom, so I appreciate that. Now, how can people get in touch with you?
See, I'm very good at talking to you. I'm not very good at social media and self-promotion, which if I want to be a motivational speaker for a living, I should get better at it. But I do have an Instagram account, and it's called pvgamechanger. pvgamechanger. So you can follow me, and we're not very active, but I'm getting a whole team together. But it's called PV, like Patrick Venzke, Game Changer, because we're changing the game. We're having a website coming up. It's called Big Man Motivation. But right now, I think the number one way to get a hold of me real fast would be PV Game Changer on Instagram.
Okay.
LinkedIn, like we talked on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn because it's less, it's not like Facebook where people will try to sell you stuff. LinkedIn is more for professionals. So reach out to me. I love to come to your school, to your corporation, and talk about mental health, recovery. Let's change the state for you, so we get the party started.
Absolutely. And I will put these in the, as they say, the show notes. I will put these in the notes so people can reference them as well. So yeah, and I just want to let people know that they can get in touch with me, Michelle Hill, your legacy builder at Winning Proof, at winningproof@gmail.com. That's the best way. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. I don't use Instagram a whole lot, and my website is winningproof.com. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can get, in touch with me. And I just really, Patrick, I just so appreciate you taking time today to talk with me, and I'm excited about your book. I'm excited about the adventures you have going on. Super excited about everything that you stand for.
Thank you so much. And I see, like I said, a rising consciousness. There's more and more NFL athletes. Reggie Walker is a good friend of mine. They're writing books saying, you know what? I'm a victim of sexual abuse. I'm not okay. And the message is, it's okay not to be okay, and you're not alone. Help is coming. That's all I have for the day. Thank you so much for your time, Michelle. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. And this is another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted.